Welcome to True Echo, where powerful stories rise from real struggles, and every echo carries truth. Today's story is one of dignity, quiet resistance, and a moment that shattered the illusions of privilege at a luxury resort. What began as humiliation turned into revelation when the couple they mocked turned out to be the very force behind it all. Stay with us to witness a transformation not just of perception, but of power. The sun above Whispering Palms Resort shimmered over the infinity pool like glass, a picture-perfect morning on South Carolina's most exclusive shoreline. Guests in wide-brimmed hats sipped drinks laced with mint and lime, their laughter light and idle. Every detail of the resort was designed to suggest effortless opulence, from the bamboo cabanas to the marble walkways warmed by the early light. It was into this curated calm that Daniel and Monique Parker stepped, newly married, radiating elegance and presence without needing to say a word. Daniel wore a linen shirt, untucked, casual, his smooth stride hinting at a man comfortable in any room. Monique's sundress fluttered gently as she walked, her natural curls pinned in a soft bun, diamond studs catching the sun with every nod of her head. They were here to celebrate, a honeymoon long delayed due to their work commitments, a rare retreat for just the two of them. But before they could even order their first drink, the air shifted. "You don't belong here." The words weren't shouted, but they didn't need to be. They were sharp, biting, and designed to wound without profanity. They came from Stacy, a woman with a clipboard and a crisp uniform, standing with one hand on her hip at the edge of the VIP section by the pool. Her voice cut through the air like a whistle, clear, condescending. "This is the platinum guest area. Reserved for guests with proper access. I don't see your wristbands." Daniel looked up from his book slowly, spine straightening, but said nothing yet. Monique, already sitting, turned with visible disbelief. Their skin gleamed under the sun, golden and proud, but every eye on the deck seemed to interpret their presence differently. "We weren't given wristbands," Daniel said calmly. "We're staying in the penthouse suite." Stacy squinted, her lips pressing together. "Right. That's unlikely." Around them, murmurs rose like a breeze, quiet enough to be deniable, loud enough to be heard. Someone laughed behind a champagne glass. A woman whispered something to her partner while keeping her eyes fixed on Monique's sandals. A younger waiter nearby froze with a tray of drinks in hand. He looked from Stacy to Daniel and back again, unsure whether to serve or slink away. No one intervened. Monique, tightening her grip on her handbag, said quietly to Daniel, "Just say it. Tell her who you are." But Daniel didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he pulled out his phone, dialed quietly, and said into the receiver, "Get me Savannah HQ, tell them Daniel Parker needs to speak to the director." Stacy's smirk faltered for a moment. "Savannah?" she asked, suddenly uncertain. Daniel said nothing. He placed his book back on the lounger and stood. "Let's go," he said to Monique, voice calm as the tide. But not quietly. They walked away with grace, not haste. And behind them, silence fell again, this time not from luxury, but from discomfort. And the cameras began to roll. Because what no one knew, what no one imagined, was that the man they just dismissed as unworthy wasn't just a guest. He owned the resort. 2 days earlier, the moment Daniel and Monique first walked into the glass-paneled lobby of Whispering Palms Resort, the energy shifted. Not in the dramatic way some might imagine, there were no gasps, no dropped luggage, but a subtle tremor swept through the room. Conversations dipped. Heads turned a fraction. Eyes widened slightly, then looked away with polished discomfort. It was the kind of reception you don't always notice unless you've lived it before. Daniel approached the check-in counter, his voice composed. "Daniel and Monique Parker. Penthouse suite. Should be under Parker." The receptionist, Chloe, a young woman with perfect teeth and a too-tight headset, blinked as if surprised to hear him speak so confidently. She began typing, eyes flicking back and forth between the monitor and the couple in front of her. I'm not seeing that here." Just a moment. Behind her, another staffer leaned in and whispered something under her breath. Chloe nodded, smiled thinly, and continued tapping. It looks like your booking was flagged for verification. Probably because it came through a corporate channel. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You mean the corporate channel that owns this property? Chloe flushed. Let me get a manager. 10 minutes later, they were still waiting. Eventually, Chloe returned with forced cheer. All set now. There was just a bit of a mix-up with the system. Your suite's being given a quick touch-up. You're welcome to wait in the lounge across the lobby. Monique's eyes flicked toward the plush area where white guests sipped on complimentary drinks. Instead, they were directed toward a less grand alcove near the resort shop, where no champagne waited, just low chairs and outdated magazines. They walked quietly across the marble floors. As they passed a bellhop, his words slipped out too fast, too loud, didn't know they let folks in without collars now. Monique stopped mid-stride. Excuse me, she snapped. Daniel touched her arm. Not now, he said calmly. His jaw was tight, but his voice steady. The words had stung, but he refused to give them more air. From a distance, a young black housekeeper noticed. Her eyes widened, and she nodded subtly toward Daniel, a recognition. A respect. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Eventually, Chloe came back with keycards. Penthouse. 10th floor. Elevators just past the spa, she said, voice clipped. Daniel nodded. Thank you. In the elevator, Monique didn't speak. But her hand in Daniel's said everything. This was supposed to be their honeymoon. And they hadn't even made it to the room without being reminded that, to some people, skin still wrote the script. What neither of them said aloud, at least not yet, was that Daniel had expected this. That's why he came without announcing himself. Because a title means nothing if the people under you don't know your name. And Daniel wanted to see what happened when they thought he was no one. The penthouse suite was immaculate, as expected. High vaulted ceilings, panoramic ocean views, hand-carved furnishings, all of it curated for exclusivity. But even the soft breeze rolling in from the balcony couldn't quite undo the tension that had followed Daniel and Monique from the lobby. They unpacked in silence, each movement deliberate, like they were building a wall of calm around themselves. Monique ran her fingers along the edge of the granite sink in the bathroom, her reflection in the mirror unreadable. This place is beautiful, she finally said, her voice flat. Shame about the people. Daniel didn't answer right away. He was at the window, watching the waves roll in. It's always the same story. Doesn't matter how high you climb, they still expect you to beg for a seat. Monique turned. And you're still planning to stay quiet? He looked at her. I need to see it play out. Dinner that night was meant to be their first celebratory meal as husband and wife. Daniel had booked the Ocean View restaurant months in advance, window table, champagne ready. But when they arrived at 7:03 p.m., the hostess barely concealed her hesitation. I'm sorry, Mr. Parker, she said, glancing at a clipboard. It looks like all the window tables are reserved. I can seat you near the kitchen. Daniel didn't flinch. We requested the ocean view. She offered a tight smile. Only available to platinum-level guests. Monique stepped forward. We are platinum level. The hostess faltered, her voice suddenly shaky. I'll double-check. She didn't return. A different server came by 10 minutes later, offering nothing but the bare minimum. When they ordered, the server, a young man named Tyler, made sure to note the price of the Kobe steak and the Krug champagne. His tone held just enough edge to signal something unspoken. He didn't linger to chat, didn't smile, didn't engage. The food, when it finally arrived, mirrored the service. Daniel's steak was cold, Monique's vegetarian risotto came sprinkled with pancetta. She called it out politely, only to be told they could scrape it off. The look Monique gave Tyler could have turned stone to ash. "Take it back," she said through clenched teeth. Tyler didn't apologize. He simply took the plate and disappeared. They waited another 45 minutes. When her new dish came back, it was flavorless and overcooked. Monique pushed it aside. "I'm not hungry anymore," she whispered. Daniel reached for her hand. "We finish the champagne, and we go. On our terms." But even as they left, the server dropped a check without being asked. "Just thought you might be done," he said coolly. Daniel paused, letting the silence stretch before replying. "We are. With more than just the meal." They left without a word. But the message they took with them was loud and clear: no matter how much you paid, no matter what you wore, they saw only what they chose to see. The next morning, sunlight painted soft lines across the marble floors of their suite. The view from the balcony was breathtaking, but neither Daniel nor Monique seemed eager to linger. They had come here for peace, for celebration, but instead found themselves enduring a slow, cutting kind of war. A war not of bullets or shouts, but of stares, cold greetings, and invisible lines drawn around who belonged. They dressed intentionally. Not extravagantly, but with dignity. Monique wore a soft blue wrap dress, understated yet elegant. Daniel, ever composed, chose a crisp white shirt and tan slacks. They looked like they belonged in a campaign for the resort, if only the staff had eyes to see. Their first stop that morning was the spa for their scheduled couples massage. The hallway leading to it was hushed, echoing with the soft click of heels and the whisper of luxury. A platinum blonde receptionist glanced up from her computer. "Can I help you?" she asked flatly, before they even reached the counter. Daniel nodded. "We're here for the 10 a.m. massage. Penthouse guests. Suite 1002. The woman hesitated. "We usually confirm VIP access for private bookings." Monique stepped forward. "It was confirmed at check-in yesterday." The woman blinked. Must have been a system error again. That phrase. Again. They were shown into a private lounge, where white couples in matching robes laughed over cucumber water. Daniel and Monique sat in silence, their posture straight. No robe was offered. No drink. When the therapist arrived, she greeted them without eye contact. The massage was impersonal. Professional, but cold. Afterward, Monique whispered, "I feel like a shadow here." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence between them had become its own language. They walked to the piano lounge, hoping for something lighter. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and old jazz. A grand piano sat untouched in the corner. Daniel approached it quietly. He hadn't played in years, but he needed release. His fingers found the keys. A gentle jazz melody drifted through the space, melancholic, reflective, deeply personal. For a moment, Monique watched him play, her expression softening. The music wrapped around them like a warm coat, dulling the pain. Then, a voice interrupted. "You work here?" Daniel stopped playing. A middle-aged white man in a blazer tilted his head. "I've seen someone like you at a resort in Naples. You people do move around a lot, huh?" Monique rose from her chair like lightning. "He's not the damn pianist. And I'm not housekeeping, either." The man shrugged. "Well, relax. Just asking." "No," Daniel said, standing, his voice low but thunderous. "You were assuming. That's the difference." The man scoffed and backed away. But the damage had already been done. Monique's eyes shimmered, not from sadness, but from something hotter, fiercer. "Everywhere we go," she said to Daniel, "they treat us like we snuck in." Daniel nodded slowly. "They don't see us as guests. Only as intruders. Until they can't ignore us." He took her hand and led her from the lounge. They passed another couple, white, mid-30s, expensive sunglasses, and overheard the young woman murmur, "Maybe they're influencers. Places let in anyone now." The words hit like stones. But Monique didn't turn. She didn't give them the satisfaction. And Daniel, though seething, stayed silent. But not for long. Back in the suite, the door clicked shut behind them like the period on an insult. The opulence around them, custom wood finishes, fine art, the ocean stretching beyond glass doors, suddenly felt hollow. It wasn't the amenities that were failing them. It was the humanity. Daniel stood by the balcony, arms crossed. Monique sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders tight. The music from the piano still lingered in her mind, bittersweet and unraveling. "I don't want to be here anymore," she said, finally. Daniel didn't turn around. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But we have to be." Monique looked up. "Why? So we can be ignored with better view lines?" He exhaled, slow and steady. "Because if we leave quietly, they win. And the next black couple who comes here, without money, without power, they'll get worse than this." Before Monique could reply, Daniel's phone vibrated on the table. He picked it up. A woman's voice came through, soft, hesitant. "Mr. Parker. This is Simone. From housekeeping. Whispering Palms, Atlanta. I transferred here last month." Daniel's brows lifted. "Simone. Of course. I remember you." She sounded nervous. "I saw your name on the guest list and recognized it immediately. But I don't think anyone else here knows who you are." "No," Daniel said grimly. "They don't. The general manager is out this week. Right now it's just floor supervisors, and Stacy." Daniel clenched his jaw. "That explains everything." Simone hesitated. "If you want, I can contact Mr. Vega in Savannah. He'd want to know how the staff is treating you." Daniel looked at Monique. She nodded. "Do it," he said. "Tell Vega I'll reach out personally tomorrow." The call ended. For a long time, Daniel said nothing. He simply stared at the ocean. Finally, he spoke. "I wanted to see how far they'd go. I needed to know. And now I do." Monique walked to his side. "And now? Now I let them show their worst one more time. On purpose?" He nodded. "So no one can say they didn't know." Later that evening, they took a quiet walk through the resort grounds. On their way back, they passed a staff hallway near the spa. A Filipina woman carrying folded towels looked up, and stopped in her tracks. "Mr. Parker," she asked cautiously. Daniel turned to her. "I'm Anna. I worked the grand opening in LA. You're the co-founder, right?" "I was," Daniel said carefully. Anna stepped closer, lowering her voice. "People don't know who you are. They just see what they want." Daniel asked, "And what do they think they're seeing?" Anna looked away. "Just another guest. Not someone who built this place." Monique's lips pressed into a thin line. Anna continued, "I didn't want to speak up and make things worse. But I'm here if you need me." Daniel nodded slowly. "Thank you." Back in their suite, the mood had shifted. They didn't feel like victims anymore. They felt like witnesses. And the resort? It was now on trial. By sunrise, Daniel was already awake, dressed, composed, and staring at the horizon like a man preparing for court. But this wasn't about vengeance. It was about visibility. Monique joined him in quiet solidarity, her white linen blouse billowing gently as she stepped onto the balcony. "You ready?" she asked. Daniel's nod was slow. "They wanted us to feel small. Let's give them something unforgettable instead." At 10:02 a.m., they returned to the very scene of their public shaming, the VIP pool deck. The same chair. The same heat. The same air thick with pretense. But this time, they didn't come quietly. Daniel wore the same collarless shirt as before, sleeves rolled up with purpose. Monique, radiant and poised, wore a tailored cream jumpsuit. Together, they walked past gasps, past whispers, past the very staff who had tried to usher them out. They sat down without asking permission. Daniel laid his book, The Fire Next Time, across his lap. Monique crossed her legs and adjusted her sunglasses. They didn't look left or right. They didn't need to. Because the pool was watching them. Again. Within minutes, Stacy appeared. And she was fuming beneath the surface of her managerial calm. "I thought we talked about this," she began, her voice falsely polite but pitched loud enough for guests nearby to hear. "You can't just come into this section without authorization. I'm going to have to ask you to." Daniel raised his hand. "If you're calling security, make sure they bring the regional director too. Leon Vega. He's expecting a call." The name hit her like a gust of wind. She faltered, blinking. Then, from the east end of the pool, 3 men in suits approached. One of them was tall, composed, and wore a name tag with weight, Leon Vega, Regional Director, Whispering Palms Group. He walked directly toward Daniel, then nodded with a kind of deference the staff had not once offered in 3 days. "Mr. Parker," Vega said calmly. "Thank you for your time." Daniel stood, offered his hand. "Mr. Vega." Vega turned to Stacy, whose face had gone pale. "You are dismissed. Immediately. Pending investigation." She stammered. "Sir, I didn't know." Vega didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Exactly. That's the problem. Murmurs swept the poolside. Guests exchanged wide-eyed looks. One man who had laughed the day before quietly grabbed his towel and disappeared. Vega faced the remaining staff and spoke firmly. "There will be mandatory sensitivity training. Staff suspensions. And restructuring of local management. This is not optional. This is effective immediately." Monique stepped forward. "And what about the guests? The ones who whispered, who laughed, who called us trouble?" Vega looked at her, then back to the crowd. "We can't force decency. But we can show what accountability looks like." Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and handed it to the staff member still filming on his phone. It was sleek, gold embossed. The name on it read, "Daniel Parker, co-founder and executive director, Whispering Palms Global." He looked around, voice cool and clear. "I don't usually lead with who I am. Because I want to see how people treat those they think don't matter." A hush settled over the deck. One heavy with guilt. One heavy with truth. Monique turned to Daniel. "So, are we staying?" Daniel sat back down in the lounger, this time with pride. "Now we are. And no one, absolutely no one, asked them to leave." That evening, as golden light slipped into dusk and the string lights across the Whispering Palms boardwalk began to flicker on, Daniel and Monique finally found the moment they'd come here to enjoy. No tension. No eyes burning through them. Just the ocean's hush and the truth behind them. They sat together near the beach's edge, those same white chairs where vacationers had laughed, judged, whispered. Now vacant. Now theirs. Daniel leaned back, hands folded behind his head, watching the tide. "You asked me back at dinner," he said softly, "why I didn't say who I was sooner." Monique glanced at him. "I remember. I needed to see how far it would go. Not for me. For whoever walks in next time without a title or a resume." She nodded, silent for a moment. "Then, you think they'll change?" He exhaled. "Some will. Some won't. But they'll remember." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a small box, unadorned, elegant. Inside was a platinum band. No diamonds. No flourish. Just one word engraved along the inside, resilient. Monique blinked. Her hand went to her chest. Daniel. For what you endured, he said. And for never once letting it define you. She slipped it on beside her wedding ring. You didn't just make a point, she said. You made a crack in the foundation. Just then, footsteps approached across the boardwalk, quick, but uncertain. A young staff member in a freshly pressed new uniform stopped a few feet away, holding 2 glasses of cold water. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, he said, voice cautious but sincere. I just wanted to thank you. Everyone's talking about what happened today, but not in the way you think. You didn't yell. You didn't threaten. You just stood your ground. And it made people look at themselves. Daniel took 1 glass, nodded. What's your name? Jordan. Monique smiled warmly. Jordan. Remember this, change doesn't start with silence. He nodded, the kind of nod that carried weight, and walked off taller than when he arrived. The waves rolled on. The chairs they once sat in with shame now felt like thrones. And Daniel and Monique? They weren't just reclaiming space for themselves. They were shaping it for every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. Because in places built to exclude, presence itself is protest. And legacy, true legacy, isn't the name on the building. It's the silence you break, and the respect you leave in your wake. As stars began to speckle the sky, Daniel reached for Monique's hand. She squeezed his fingers tight. They came for peace. They found purpose. And the ripples they made? They'd last longer than any resort memory. Today's story reminds us, it's not about how loudly you demand respect, it's about how powerfully you carry yourself when others deny it. As Monique said, you didn't make a point. You made a crack in the foundation. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see things differently, don't let it stop here. Like the video, subscribe to True Echo, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a voice that deserves to be heard. And let us know in the comments, have you ever felt invisible in a place you earned the right to be in? We see you. And your voice matters.